what I would say here is, what a victory. What an amazing victory.
Have we gotten to that yet?
Yeah. Let's get into the game. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, all right, let's talk about it. First, let's hear from Nick Sirianni on the other side.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it. I would love to hear this. Let me drink up these Nick Sirianni tears.
Like, whether the calls were bad or whether the calls were good or whatever it was, I think when you play the way we did tonight, and when you play the way we did on all three phases, like offense, defense, special teams, coaching, right? When you play like that, it does seem like it seems like everything's going against you. You create your own luck, and we played like crap. We didn't do a good enough job, and it feels like things go against you. Those plays, those scenarios that happen when you play like that get magnified, right? Whether it was the right call or wrong call, and so we made our own luck today, and it was bad.
He's right about that. He's right about that. Listen, the officials. Let's just get this out of the way, because I've heard from a lot of salty, bitter Eagles fans, like our own Blake Friedman here.
Yes.
Just bitter, angry, upset,
like a sour
sad.
grape.
Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo. I'm an Eagles fan. Boo.
Yeah. Didn't know tears could get through those glasses.
Yes, exactly. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo. That's what they do. I do that with my kids, by the way. My kids will start complaining. It drives them crazy. They'll start yelling about something like, I don't want to go to bed, or like, don't make me eat that, or whatever. I'm like, oh, boo. I'm not fun to have as a parent.
Have this visual stuck in my nightmares for many years to come.
Look, first off, let's just talk about the penalties. Okay, the face mask penalty, the missed one on Goddard, bad call.
Yes.
Just no asked and answered, right? It was a bad call. By the way, officials make bad calls all the time, including in this game, because, by the way, the offensive pass interference on Jahan Dotson that freed up Curtis Samuel, that was a BS call as well. Sure. He was clearly running a route. He wasn't intending to try to pick the guy. And, by the way, unintended pick plays, that never gets called. That almost never gets called. So that was a bad call that went against the Commanders. As for the quarterback hit at the end of the game, I said this in the video that I put out on Twitter last night and on Instagram and TikTok. Please follow me on TikTok, because as you can see, I'm hip with the kids. At Matthew Berry TMR on all forms of social media, except the Fantasy Life app, where I'm at Matthew Berry. Here's what I would say. About that play.
Sure.
Don't put yourself in that position. That's the rule. You can sit here and say, I don't like the rule, and I hear you. And you can say, like, it's BS and it's ticky-tack, and I hear you, and I agree. It is ticky-tack and it's a BS, but that is the rule. He took a knee, there was a beat, and then Graham still hit him. And Jay Croucher. You're the Eagles. You're 8-0 and you're at home. It shouldn't come down to one play.
Yep, I'm with you.
It shouldn't come down to one play. By the way, and a play that was called correctly. Your issue is with the NFL rules, not the officials on that play. The officials made bad calls on both sides last night, but that wasn't one of them.
The unnecessary roughness was absolutely a penalty. That's absolutely a penalty. There's no issue with that at all. It's the face mask which was the one, but it
was bad, but right, and yes, and should they be able to review that, and they can't, and then there's all sorts of issues with NFL officiating, and it's called inconsistently, and all of that asked and answered. That's not why. Here's the unnecessary roughness. He takes a knee, there's a beat, and then boom. Yep. Two guys hit him. And look at Heineke. We won the Super Bowl. He's up. That's right.
We're
I took a
5-5,
knee.
baby.
Boom, boom. Two beats. There's two beats before he gets hit.
It's very clumsy. It's a very silly play.
It's a dumb play.
It really might have cost them dearly, honestly.
Right. And he easily could have stepped aside. He could have held up. There was enough of a space between the time he steps down and they get there that they could have held up and they could have just touched him. Instead, they dove in trying to maybe get credit for the sack. Who knows why they do it, but it's a stupid play, especially from a veteran like that. That's the rule. You don't have to like the rule, but that is the rule.
If the Eagles got the ball back there, it felt like there was 100% chance that they were winning that game. I'm not sure how much faith you had in the vaunted Washington secondary.
They were at home up by 10 against the Vikings last week, and they lost.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
All right. Before we jump into the fantasy impact, let's talk a little bit about just overall football impact. That was a pretty shocking result, losing at home as 11.5 point favorites.
And I want to give credit. So a couple things. First off, credit to both. I mean, listen, Ron Rivera especially, he gets ultimate credit. But, Scott Turner, I thought, called a great game plan. And Jack Del Rio, who I've criticized on this show at the beginning of the year because of the underperformance of the defense stepped up. The defense has played great over the last couple of weeks, but especially this was a terrific performance by both the defense and the offense. Both coordinators, I thought, called absolutely masterful games. And so Scott Turner was like, hey, we're going to just keep running the ball. They kept getting into third and short. They kept converting. They kept running. The Eagles coming into this game were I was really surprised that on the broadcast, Troy Aikman was saying, like, wow, I just can't believe they're just taking it to the Eagles like this. And I'm like, I think I'm paraphrasing, but he was surprised by, and I'm like,
you see what Damian Pierce did?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in a game in which the Texans were like losing bad and don't have a guy like Terry McLaurin, in that game. Like they didn't have Brandon Cooks in that game. Like they don't have, and still Damian Pierce ran all over them. Like they were giving up like 6 yards a carry to the Texans. Coming into that game over the last month, the Philadelphia Eagles were 27th against the run. They were a bottom 5 run defense coming into that game. It's one of the reasons why you liked Antonio Gibson over on the rushing. I liked Brian Robinson over on the rushing. Both those ended up hitting. And so, the total scrimmage yards for Gibson did not hit, but he came very close. And they controlled the clock and they ran the ball very, very well. Philadelphia knew it was coming and still couldn't actually stop it. They couldn't get off the field. They kept converting. The Commanders kept converting third downs.
Yep. Okay, well, let's talk about the Commanders' backfield. Brian Robinson getting heavy workload. Antonio Gibson, though, gets the passing game work. Who do you want in this backfield going forward?
I think you still want Antonio Gibson. They both get into the end zone here. It's not always that you're going to have the kind of, I get it, Robinson had the 86 rushing yards, but because there is passing game usage for Antonio Gibson, which seems weird to say because, he was 3 for 14 in this one. They were running the ball so effectively. But this is not going to be the typical game script. This is a team that usually is throwing quite a bit. And so I think both guys are viable. But because there's no passing game usage for Brian Robinson, he needs a touchdown to pay off for you.
Yep.
Gibson has more of a floor because of the passing game usage.
Basically a 50-50 split in terms of snap count. Jeez, they played a lot of snaps last night on offense. And to me, that's the story of the whole game is that, look, everyone's talking about the Eagles' rush defense. Like, the Commanders had 3.1 yards per carry. It wasn't like Damian Pierce 2.0. It's just the Eagles couldn't get off the field. And the Commanders were getting these runs in huge leverage spots and converting third downs at over 50%.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about the quarterback hit at the end of the game. But, look at time of possession.
Yeah, it was
to me, it's insane. Look, you guys know me. Look, if you can't trust somebody dressed like this, then who in this crazy world can you trust?
No one in America.
Thank you very much. The idea here is that that there was over 40 minutes of possession for the Commanders. I am the first person to dump all over Washington. But last night, objectively, they were the better team, start to finish.
Yep, they played really well. And yes, the Eagles, they turned it over 4 times, but the Commanders forced those fumbles. Hurts throws the pick. That was another huge reason why they dominated time of possession. The Eagles,
and you can even say, it maybe shouldn't even have been that close. Like at the beginning, the personal foul that, and then they get in there, quick. Look, I understand people want to argue about the Goddard fumble because of the face mask, and that's 100% just a brutally bad call. It is what it is. But again, I would argue the Dotson call was also pivotal as well, and put them in a third and long, and that should have been a completion to Curtis Samuel.
Yep.
So I don't believe that's the reason the Eagles lost this game.
We should mention as well, it's broken that Dallas Goedert has hurt his shoulder on that face mask play, so we'll just have to wait and see with that, but it looks like he is going to miss some time. So just a really bad play for the Eagles at night all around.
Yeah, no question. So we'll talk about tight end options to pick up on the waiver wire, both Goddard and his former teammate, former Philadelphia Eagles tight end Zach Ertz.
Yep.
Also, and with Darren Waller on the IR, chances are you're looking for some tight ends. We have some waiver wire options for you coming up later.
Let's quickly hit the wide receivers because A.J. Brown's stat line was quite jarring. 1 reception for 7 yards, 4 targets. Any concern about A.J. Brown?
No, this is a guy who's had over 14 fantasy points in 6 out of 9 games so far this year. Bad day at the office. They didn't possess the ball very much. He limped off the field in the first quarter. It looked like there was an injury scare. Who knows if he was maybe less than 100% here. It's his fewest fantasy points in a game this season. Just, again, they didn't possess the ball. Credit Jack Del Rio and the Commanders defense. They had a game plan for specifically for A.J. Brown. It was clear Hurts was going to Devontae Smith. He's going to Quez Watkins. He was looking elsewhere because Brown was so covered, that they basically took Brown out of this game, and Hurts was under pressure a decent amount. And, oh, by the way, they didn't have the ball that much. They just didn't have that many possessions to be able to get the ball to A.J. Brown. If there's a manager in your league that's panicking, I would make an offer for A.J. Brown. As much as I'm sitting here having fun with the Commanders' victory, I still say the Eagles are the best team in the NFC.
Yep. Okay. Just before we move on, and please God, let us move on from the Washington Commanders, but Terry McLaurin. The Commanders didn't win this game because of the run game, because of the defense. They won it because Terry McLaurin looked like a superstar out there. He goes 8 for 128, has a big play on Darius Slay, who also played well against when they played the Eagles earlier in the season. And I think that you're just praying that Taylor Heineke's the guy moving forward.
Yeah, for a variety of reasons, but especially if you have Terry McLaurin on your team. In the 4 games he's played with Taylor Heineke this season, he's averaging 16.6 fantasy points per game, a 32% target share, over 92 yards per game. You compare that, as you see it here on your screen, in the 6 games with Wentz, just a 16% target share, under 4 receptions a game, about 61 yards a game, 11 fantasy points per game. So 5.5 points worse, 30 yards less, 2.5 to 3 receptions worse with Carson Wentz than with Taylor Heineke. By the way, their schedule lines up really nicely, right? So the Texans are this week, then the Falcons, then the Giants. And the Giants are good this year, but they're not as good as the Eagles, who the Commanders just beat. And then there's a bye, and then they play the Giants again. So they have a very legitimate chance to go 3-1, 4-0 over the next 4. I don't think they beat the Giants, but if they could get a split against the Giants, they can beat the Texans and the Falcons, which I think is, reasonable to assume.
Sure. That they 3-point favorites in Houston.
They're 3-point favorites in Houston. Atlanta, that'll be tough. They've played tough in every game, but in most games this year, I should say. But those are winnable games for the Commanders. So if they split with the Giants, that's 3-1, and they are 8-6.
Yep.
Going into the end. So I'm just I'm excited. It'll be interesting to see what happens. The last conversation here on the Commanders is, what do you do with Carson Wentz or Taylor Heineke? Heineke's been, they've been winning with Heineke. Objectively, Carson Wentz is a better quarterback.
He's better. Yep.
He's a better quarterback. He can make more throws. He's got a bigger arm. He's a better quarterback. He doesn't. I know this sounds insane because Wentz has made some boneheaded plays, but Wentz doesn't turn the ball over. He isn't as gunslingery. No. If that's a verb. He's not as gunslingery as Taylor Heineke. But what I will say is, and this is what's the interesting thing, right? So he's not as gunslingery. He's a better prototypical quarterback than he is. He is fundamentally a better quarterback.
I think there's this perception because Wentz was associated with the losing at the start of the season. That wasn't Wentz's fault. That was the defense's fault. Now the defense all of a sudden is pretty solid, and Chase Young as well is coming back
for the
this
Texans
week.
game.
Last one for you, and I hate talking.
But I was going to say is but there is a swagger. There's a swagger to Taylor Heineke. There is an attitude, and that's been one of the knocks on Carson Wentz, not just in Washington, but at previous stops in his career, is that this is not a guy that gets in your face. He's not like a leader. You know what I mean?
Very low swagger quotient.
Very low swagger quotient. That's right. And that there's something to be said for where what Heineke may lack in arm strength or accuracy.
He makes up for in chains. Genuinely.
There's something to be said for that. I'm just saying. I think everyone's like, oh, it's definitely going to be Heineke. I'm not convinced it's definitely going to be Heineke, but I think it's a conversation. And when Carson went down, I think people would have been shocked, over the next 4 games, when we're out of these next 4 games, it's going to be a conversation as to whether or not it's Heineke or Wentz going forward. Yep. And I think people would be shocked if we'd said that 4 games ago.
Absolutely. Last one for you on BetMGM.
And by the way, they should have beaten the Vikings, too.
Yeah, they should have won that game. On BetMGM, Ron Rivera is 250-1 to win Coach of the Year. I don't know, 250-1 if they go 11-6 and make the playoffs.
If they make the playoffs, with Taylor Heineke,
there's like a 30-35% chance now they make the playoffs, and Rivera's 250-1. That's very big.
Again, it's a media perception award, and the media loves Ron Rivera.
And there's a lot of story around him.
There's a lot of story around him, and just everything that's going on with the Commanders outside of the football. Yep. You know what I mean? That Ron Rivera has had a tougher hill to climb than a lot of coaches because of everything that's going that has nothing to do with what's on the field.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay, respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.